Welcome back to Closer Look across the Village Media Network and wherever you get your favorite podcast with Michael Friscalenti, our editor-in-chief. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Welcome to the program, everyone. March 20th. Welcome to spring.
It's officially, you wouldn't know it's still looking outside here.
It's something.
Oh,
it ain't spring.
I had my big boots on. I was almost slipping and falling out there.
Oh, my goodness. 10:46 this morning. It arrived, and certainly here in Northern Ontario, expecting up to 12 centimeters over the weekend.
And just to point out what a good guy Scott is, he actually put a message in our office chat this morning warning people to be careful as they walk things. It was so slippery. Wasn't that this morning?
It was, only because on my drive in, It was like a little mist of rain, and the temperature was at -2. There was a lot of slush.
Happy spring.
And it just, I was, kind of slipping and sliding.
Perfect spring. You're going to get 3 weeks of golf in before the winter comes back, I think.
Oh, my God.
Yep, right on.
Let's hope it's more than
There
3.
is good news, though, Scott.
Yes, there is. Take it away.
Yes, today was the announcement of the National Newspaper Award nominations. In our world, in our industry, it's a very prestigious award. The National Newspaper Awards have been around for a long time, honoring the best in printed journalism. We have 2 nominations. Our team at Village has 2 nominations. I'm going to take my glasses off so I can read it. I can read it better.
I do the same.
I know. Our team at the Trillium, who we talk about all the time on this show, Jessica Smith-Cross, Charlie Pinkerton, and Jack Howen, were nominated for the John Wesley Defoe Award for Politics for their relentless coverage, is the best way to describe it, of power and influence in Ontario politics, namely all the scoops and all their research into the Skills Development Fund, who's getting funding based on what political connections they have. So it's their series and their ongoing coverage of this that has been nominated for this award. So that's a huge honor. Only 3 people are nominated for this award, 3 teams of journalists, and to be in that group is pretty special. So a huge shout out to them. Our listeners and our viewers obviously know all those faces pretty well because they come on the show quite a bit, talk about different issues. So we're super proud of the team at the Trillium, our group at Queen's Park. So congrats to them. And then we have, on the other flip side, we have one of our great local journalists. We have 27 local news sites across the province. Sudbury.com is one of our biggest and best and longest running. And Jenny Lamotte is a wonderful human being and a great reporter. She's at Sudbury.com. And she was nominated for the Cora Hind Award for local reporting for exposing the plight of seniors who had left stranded by broken elevators in these apartment buildings in Sudbury. And, of course, how the landlords and city officials were basically doing nothing to fix the problem. So imagine you have, like, a bunch of senior citizens living for weeks on end without an elevator in their building. So if you live up on the 10th or 12th floor, how are you going to get downstairs to grocery shop? And she too was relentless. She kept reporting on this story and made lots of headlines in Sudbury, and she covered every angle of it. And so to see her name in there, nominated for a National Newspaper Award, is pretty special. So, I think I say this all the time when we're on here, but it is a grind what we do.
It is.
It's not heroic. We're not doctors. We're not saving lives, but we're really committed to telling the truth about what's happening in our communities, what's happening in the province. And we do it 24/7. We are always thinking about this job. We get phone calls in the middle of the night. We get tips all the time, and to take us on crazy adventures and the stuff that we're working on. But it's super rewarding. And we don't think about awards. We don't do it for awards. And I'm not nominated for this award, but I'm so proud because this is a team that I work with.
Absolutely.
And to see their names on there, the National Newspaper Awards is not a small thing to be nominated.
No, it is not.
So huge congrats to all of them. And I think they'll all win, but I don't want to say that. Well, I guess I just did.
As you did, but as they say, it is an honor just to be nominated.
Absolutely.
Before we get to tonight's program, a quick question. Did you watch Pierre Poilievre on Joe Rogan?
It's funny. I haven't watched it yet, but I've read tons about it.
Yes.
I wanted all the different people saying, we hear the big takeaways from the interview. I know Justin Ling in the Toronto Star had some things to say about
Yes, he did.
But you watched it, right?
I watched most of it. It's a completely different Pierre Poilievre than what we have been used to over the past number of years. I was impressed overall with his performance. I like the fact that he was very respectful of the Prime Minister. And I think you and I have talked about this. I think deep down there is a mutual respect between the two of them. In fact, he said to Rogan that while he's in the U.S., he has been texting with the Prime Minister to keep him apprised of what he's doing down there. Also interesting when Rogan pressed him on Alberta separating possibly from Canada. Poilievre shut that down right away and said it's not going to happen. Of course, born and raised in Alberta, he knows that they're a hard-working, passionate crew of Albertans out there. But he said there's no way that it's going to happen. And he also had some choice words for the president.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think I read that he said that he wishes Donald Trump would knock that shit off when he was talking about the Canada becoming the 51st state. So he's pretty honest about that. There was also a moment I read about that I think Rogan challenged or talked about this, longstanding rumor that Fidel Castro is actually Justin Trudeau's father. And I'm going to say it because it was on the podcast. Yeah. And he shut that down right away and said that's not true. So didn't buy into those, kind of conspiracy theories that are going around. Look, Poilievre has been honest about this, speaking with Peter Mansbridge a couple weeks ago, just about how they're going to try things a little differently, right? He's going to do a lot more speaking to people, a lot more, maybe showing himself a little more, right? And, I'm not a political strategist or even a political expert, but, Carney's going to be there for a little while. So there's a bit of a runway here for Poilievre, right? To sort of show Canadians who he is, maybe in a different way than people know him, right? And it is interesting that relationship too. I've never really heard a prime minister and an opposition leader kind of talk about each other in that way. But there is a mutual respect there, right? Yeah. And I guess they both exist in that political arena where you don't really know what that's like to be in the spotlight, to be the prime minister, to be the leader of the opposition, unless you're actually in that job. It's quite a spotlight on you. I am going to watch it over the weekend and glean some more things from it. But it's certain. If it was to do one thing, it's gotten attention. It's everywhere. It's all everybody was talking about yesterday.
Well, it's the biggest podcast in the world.
Yeah,
right?
And biggest podcast in the world. Well, second biggest, isn't it?
Well,
aren't we the biggest? Have you been lying to me? You've been lying to me the whole time?
The numbers don't lie.
Zach, is he not telling me the truth? So, yeah, I mean, it is. And it did get, I think it was a line story for a time in every major news organization in Canada. People wanted to know what he was saying. So, I think it's be interesting to know. Do we know, are those numbers public? Do we know how many people? I guess it's on YouTube, right? So what's the viewership?
I think I don't know specifically, but I saw a line where it was something like 10 times the audience that the CBC would ever achieve.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fair to say. But is it close to ours?
Joe's catching us.
We have more followers, don't we, on YouTube?
It's close.
You guys have really been lying to me.
This is terrible. You talk about the runway that he has, depending on how these 3 upcoming by-elections go and whether or not there's any more floor crossing. It could be 3 years with 3 more years with Carney.
It could be. And so that's some time to kind of reboot and reset and figure out. And we're all kind of really nervous right now about what's going to happen in the economy. We're talking about it every day.
We are.
So who even knows where the country will be a year from now in terms of job losses, in terms of the state of the economy?
Yeah.
And so there's just by the time the next election happens, it's going to be a lot of different things going on here, I think.
All right, good stuff.
The last thing I'll say, it was interesting. I think it was Justin Ling in the Toronto Star who basically made the point of we often are told that politicians don't have 2.5 hours to sit and have a lengthy, in-depth, nuanced conversation about things. Well, they do. They do. I mean, obviously, yes, you make time, I guess, for the second biggest podcast in the world. The biggest podcast in the world. To us. Yeah, but it's the truth, right? We're so often told that no one's available to talk.
Yeah.
Well, they can talk, and they're very good at it, and they're capable of showing that they're a lot like us. They're a lot like everybody else. They're sit and have a conversation.
And you're going to love the part about the apple.
I will.
That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
You're going to love that part.
All right.
Dan Schulman, by the way, from Rogers Blue Jays Baseball, joining us Monday at 7. Okay, let's
that's exciting.
That's very exciting. Opening day.
6 days away.
A week today at Rogers Center.
Is it?
Friday, yeah.
How they're not opening on Thursday?
I don't believe so.
We're opening on Thursday.
Are you?
We in the Detroit Tigers are opening on Thursday. It's interesting back to Poilievre, because what we're going to talk about today is something that Pierre Poilievre would definitely have a lot of opinions on.
Yes,
it's about retail theft in this country and the crime rate, how much that particular crime has gone up. We've talked about this in the past on the podcast. I'm going to take my glasses off again so I can see this tiny printing that I put off. We had Rui Rodriguez from the Retail Council of Canada was here. He's actually been on the show a couple times.
Yeah.
And he's a very intelligent guy and knows this issue inside out. And what we've seen in the last 5 or so years is just this huge growth in organized retail crime, where it's not just petty shoplifting. It's like this is their industry. These guys are going into these stores. They're getting big ticket items. They're getting it at scale. They're going back and they're reselling it. So it's a huge criminal operation. I think we had him on once to talk about it. Didn't someone stole $1.3 million in booze from the LCBO, right?
Yep.
And so it's kind of continued to be in the headlines. In Winnipeg, actually, a couple of business owners were in the Winnipeg Free Press talking about how they're considering some measures, including asking customers to show ID when they come in their store, like give their ID. Like, if you're going to shop here, give us your driver's license.
Wow.
And then you get it back when you pay, right? Because it's gotten so bad. Another idea they're throwing out is just prepay. Like, if you're going to come to the grocery store, you got to prepay like you prepay for gas.
Like gas. Yeah,
like gas, right? Which is crazy that it's gotten to that point. But that's how desperate they are, how bad the situation's gotten. So those are a couple things thrown around. And there was a guy in Brampton, the Peel Region Police a couple weeks ago arrested a guy, series of targeted thefts against major retailers. Stole approximately 30 grand worth of stuff. So this is his day job to do this, right? 300 bottles of alcohol. And in Aurelia, the local detachment there, the OPP, had a recent press conference talking about how they're seeing the similar increase in retail theft. And they've chalked it up, which is fair, I think, to unaffordability and the position that some communities or people in the community are feeling. They're just struggling to eat. They're struggling to pay the bills. And they've resorted, maybe 5 years ago, they would have never resorted to shoplifting. They're doing that now. And so they're seeing that. And the police there actually said that they play a part in how, we're going to manage the needs of individuals to minimize this problem, right? To help people in other ways so they don't feel they have to do that. So there's all kinds of angles to this story. But I think it's a great opportunity to revisit Rui's interview with us.
It is, yeah.
Because it's very detailed. The guy notes it. I think it was at $9 billion was the figure he put on how much losses there were in Canada over a year because of organized retail theft. And he really has the nuance, and he talked about what actually will work when it comes to legislative changes, what we can actually do. Yeah. So I think it's worth watching that again.
The Retail Council of Canada has just come out with a brand new report that highlights retail crime in Canada and the impact it's having not only on business but also on communities and safety in general. Here to talk about the report is Rui Rodriguez, who heads up loss prevention and risk management at the Retail Council of Canada. Rui, welcome to Closer Look, and thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Rui, the new report says retail crime in Canada has become more violent, more organized, and more costly than ever before. Just how bad has it gotten?
Yes, I'll take that in three parts. So costly. Last comparison we did was it was in 2018, where we did a survey to measure retail crime, and based on respondents at that point, retail losses was estimated at about $5 billion. Most recent report, as you know, states it's 9.1 billion. Now that's based on responses from those for the survey. I actually believe it's a little higher than that. So it's doubled in almost 5 years. So losses, certainly a concern. And then, of course, there's the economic impact that as those losses occur and these goods are being stolen and resold through resale markets, online marketplaces, that's taxpayer dollars not being collected. So it does have quite a large economic effect, as well as, retail prices and how those shift. So that's a concern. The violence and the prolific nature and organized crime is probably the biggest concern. Post-COVID, we saw this impact and effect of people becoming more brazen when they commit their crimes, more violent in nature. We've seen our population of unhoused individuals go up, people dealing with mental health, drug addictions, and so forth in many communities across Canada. So when you put all this together, coupled with the fact that coming out of COVID, the prosecutions of these type of individuals and the perception that retail crime is victimless crime, it's property crime, it really doesn't have a victim. We struggled judicially and from a court's perspective to hold these people to account. Now, we're not talking about the first-time offender. We're talking about somebody who makes a living of this, a professional thief, and or those that are chronically stealing and are violent in the nature when they steal. We've seen a massive increase of violence, 300% as reported by retailers. We've seen much more utilization of weapons. It's a daily occurrence that we hear about weapons being used in retail, whether it's bear spray, knives, some case guns. 5 years ago, that might be reported once every few months. It's a daily occurrence. And yet retail criminals, these individuals perpetuate these crimes. Typically, these matters are pled down to just the theft rather than the robbery or other involved because it's easier to plead down a matter. So you have these serious offenders that are perceived to be just shoplifters, where reality is they're violent individuals. They are running retail crime enterprises or organizations. They're having a massive impact. And from a community perspective, if you think about the young person or person in general working in retail who signed up to have a fun job, maybe it's their first job, certainly didn't sign up to have somebody pull a knife or bear spray on them or have somebody spit on them, it's having a massive impact on the worker. We have members who report a much higher degree of people off on leave as a result of a violent incident that could have been either physical or verbal in the retail environment. In addition, you've seen retailers and some that have closed up their locations in these more prone areas for crime, which creates an effect. You have a vacant location that's boarded up with graffiti and all, and creates and invites a criminal element, and or potentially a retailer that was supporting that market with goods that is no longer there. So it has a great effect. Our criminal system hasn't modified enough to deal with it. We absolutely, our criminal code, the legislation that is in place, bail reform, we need changes. Today, it's a revolving door. A criminal in retail gets arrested, they're released same day or next day, mostly it's same day, and they're back reoffending. Bail reform was amended last year with Bill C-48 coming out in January, where it does call for amendments where those individuals involved in violence and or weapons, they now have to have a burden of proof to show cause why they should be released. Yet we still see way too often those individuals that are repeat prolific offenders involved in violence are still being released same day or next day. So we don't even see the legislation that is currently in place being used to the best that it can. Hence, my opinion, and I think it's shared, that we need much more prescriptive sentencing guidelines for criminals so that it's not left to chance. When somebody is offended multiple times, there should be a graduated sentencing for punishment. And it doesn't have to be just incarceration, but whether it's a no-go back to that retailer, there's different cities doing electronic monitoring with anklets and different natures. But we need to prevent these criminals from reoffending. And if they truly can't be a good standing citizen, incarceration may be that choice. But that's where I believe now we're at the precipice of making sure we're tougher on crime. And this isn't perceived as shoplifters who aren't causing any harm to anyone. We need to make sure the perception is real, that there's an element of retail crime that has prolific criminals that are having a massive impact on our communities, our people, and they should be not lumped in with the opportunistic thief who steals an item for the first time.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you think of the why, that's the major reason, the fact that it seems to be easier, the punishments are severe, they're getting out the same day. Are there other reasons of the why, Rui, that's driving this?
Yeah, supply and demand is certainly one of them. Let's face it, as public citizens, we look for a deal, and the online marketplace and the ability to go directly from market to social media to sell goods and reselling of goods is also made it very easy for organized criminals to hide behind it. The fact that we have a lot more individuals who can be leveraged for it. So if I'm an enterprise that's criminal, and I know that there are consumers out there that are willing to buy goods off me online, and I can set up a platform that looks legitimate, when there's the demand for that product and I can send somebody to steal those goods from me and then ship them to their door using any one number of last mile couriers, as a criminal, I can hide. So there's also that element where organized criminals used to take more risks. They had to go in and steal themselves and could get caught. Now they're using other people to steal for them, and they can sell it through these online marketplaces and never have to meet the individual, so they feel safer. And when the consequences to those actions appear to be non-existent, I think the combination of supply and demand, as well as the lack of consequences, just gives people confidence to do it.
Rui, you talk to retailers all the time. Any anecdotes that you can share with us?
Yeah, listen, generally, most retailers, and if not all, the galvanizing concern is their people, their customers. The fact that from a safety and security of the employees, their staff, and customers coming into the store, they want to work together on changing that to make sure people feel safe in a retail environment. I think there's a lot of great work that is being done across the country. Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg is a great story. Starting to see some great collaboration in Ontario where law enforcement and retailers are coming together to make sure people feel safe. So I think that is a big story for retail. Retail is not an unsafe environment. We have a crime issue, but people are working hard to try to minimize and impact it. But we need more from a government perspective. The other is the losses. And, when people say, well, there's a lot of big retailers with deep pockets who make a lot of money. Well, here's my answer. I think if you're a retailer and you operate your business well, you should make money. That's why you get into business. So when people get criticized for making money, I think that's the wrong approach. Because what I see is those same retailers at the table with their colleagues and with law enforcement wanting to make an impact and taking the communities back. They are all there at the table saying, we are willing to work on solutions. What else can we do? And retailers, by and large, over the last 4 years have made significant investments in how they merchandise, how they retail, whether it's changing their storefronts, realigning the ins and outs of their stores, hiring more people on the floor. The use of guard services across this country has gone up probably tenfold.
Yes.
Right?
You see them everywhere.
You never used to see them.
Yeah.
Well, and that's to protect primarily your people, right? You want to send an assurance to your staff that you have someone there to protect you. In some cases, they're there to arrest the bad guys, but a lot of retailers are hands off. So there's the element of deterrence and protection, but it's that utilization. So retailers continue to make significant investments at their cost. These aren't funded by government to protect their people, their premises, and their products. And they want to see government and the judicial system step in and do as much as they can to start to impact recidivism, to reduce the amount of offending and take a more firm, direct approach on the criminals that deserve it, not the first-time offenders.
And Rui, there's been a real shift in that regard, right? I mean, it used to be years ago, a thief would walk into a store in a mall and steal something and run out, and 17 staff would chase them down the hallways of the mall. Now that just doesn't happen. They're told, stand down and just let them go. Yeah,
so it's a complex story. Some retailers still apprehend, but when you're doing that today, you have to be very prepared for the risks that brings. A general retail worker is not prepared for that. Some of the LP, loss prevention, asset protection, even guards, there's an additional training because today you're dealing with individuals that could be under the influence. They could be dealing with mental health issues and the symptoms are the same. And you need to be able to recognize that and have empathy for those individuals that may not be aware of what they're doing, and a firm touch for those who are very aware and are violent. And when you do decide to go hands-on, you don't know what that person is going to do. When we see higher utilization of weapons, somebody pulling out a needle out of their pocket. So that whole hands-on approach has to be treated much more carefully because the risk has gone up when you are and the criminals know that. So to your point, where a criminal might before run in, and we call it a grab and run, grab items, run out. And a lot of times most companies don't allow you to chase, but you could try to detain the individual. Whereas now we see evidence of individuals just walking in. They walk in, they make threats, they grab items, they walk out knowing that nobody is going to detain them, not just because it's policy, because of this fear. And even if they do get arrested, it's further amplified by the fact that they get arrested, they might spend the night in jail, get a nice meal, and they'll be back again tomorrow. And that gives them that confidence that, I can reoffend. And the consequences weren't that bad. And, that is not a good recipe right now. So even as retailers contemplate how to engage, as I said, they've made a lot of investments to try to protect themselves. But when it's about engaging, if you're going to apprehend an individual and take that risk, you want to know that on the other side, our prosecutions, our justice, our laws are going to be utilized to hold that criminal in place, and they're not coming right back to reoffend.
Because for sure, we've seen cases in all of our communities where the people show up at the same store the same day or the next day. Where you talked about, your report goes into great detail about how much retailers are struggling to contain these crime levels, right? They're limiting store hours, they're locking high-priced items, they're even closing locations in certain areas. Is there sort of a horror story that sticks out to you? You don't have to name names what the business is, but an example of a business that really epitomizes this struggle that they're all facing?
Yeah, I think some are more prone to activity than others. And, if I lump it in without speaking, in the grocery world, you have a lot of volume within. So from a accessibility. It's not just grocery. A lot of grocers have apparel, they have pharmacy. So from a volume perspective, an organized criminal can get a lot within that. So obviously there's that proneness to that. And then there's organizations that may have less of an obvious defense that become more of a target, right? Because they don't necessarily have the means to employ guards and continue to spend and all that. So the retail sector, I think it's a very diversified lens. As far as horror stories, there's been examples and they've been in the media where, individual who clearly is not in his right mind, based on the example, goes into a retail location, sets some items on fire to create a distraction tactic, because they think if they do that, that's going to be the focus while they steal. Meanwhile, they burn down a location and there's lives at risk. And when you think about that, the individual may not have done it with the intent of causing harm of life. Thought this is funny, it's a distraction tactic, but it's the severity of what impact that has. And if that happens to be a retailer that is a focus of that community, that supplies that community, and they need to now repair or reopen or potentially decide, do we even do that? There's a backfill that is gone from that community. So what may start out as some person, again, ill-intended for sure, but does something that they think, I'm just going to create a distraction here while I do this, can have a fairly large impact. And then, there's a number of incidents where we've had several security officers in the last couple of years who've died in the retail environment as a result of retail criminal incidents. That shouldn't be happening, right? That should not be happening in a retail environment.
Rui, the report concludes that better coordination is needed between retailers, law enforcement, and government. Where's the biggest gap right now, and what would you like to see change first?
Yeah, and I don't want to blame anyone, although I'll call our government to task. The collaboration with law enforcement is in good place. Retail Council of Canada hosts a national task force every month, and it is open to everyone. We started it 3.5 years ago. We have over 34 law enforcement agencies across the country and retailers that collaborate on projects, whether it's targeted enforcement, sharing intel, and working together on solutions. So I'd say that collaboration with police and retailers can continue to improve, and we certainly want to advocate with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police to make sure all police agencies are connecting and networking with the retail community. Justice, we've seen some growth in the Crown's areas as far as Winnipeg, again, a perfect example where we have the executive director of prosecution at a provincial level, as well as a supervisor in Winnipeg who are part of our working group, therefore creates that connection that when they see the same individuals, they know it, right? As part of being that collective, they start to see and build the expertise of, we know who those offenders are, so it creates great connection. So I think where the gap is and where we start to now move forward to is at a provincial and more federal level, looking at legislative changes, criminal code amendments, and clarity in language on making sure that these type of crimes, retail or either, that are naturally perceived as low-level crimes, that we look at it from the criminal lens, not the type of incident. Rather than shoplifting, we need to look at it from what is the nature of that criminal and their past, and the legislation needs to support that. So more prescriptive, because frankly, it can be a bit ambiguous the way we look at things. And just quick example, theft over and theft under $5,000 does not really help a Crown with indictable offenses for the type of criminal we're talking about. A violent, prolific offender who steals $100 every day would be pled out because they fall under theft under, if you use that as an example, versus a criminal who reoffends and is a recidivist who's hit a certain threshold falls into a different pool. And that's what I think we need to define more. And there should be very prescriptive actions as far as what the dispositions or consequences are. And if they fail based on demonstrating you didn't stay away or you breached your contract, then it needs to continue to escalate in consequence versus the same old, we're going to let you go, promise to appear at court. We may never see that date because of Jordan limits, and the individual is free to reoffend It just doesn't work.
It's interesting. That's the point I hadn't thought of. I appreciate that. Rui, can you speak to the impact all this has on prices of goods at stores? I mean, are prices by default have to go up because of the amount of money that retailers are losing?
Yeah, and it's a complex question. I don't know that one directly affects the other, but it has an impact for sure. Losses, of course, will have an impact on price. I think also when you think about the retail market and how competitive it is, if I have a toothpaste, Colgate toothpaste, and it normally sells for $4, I can't sell it for $6 just to try to make up my losses because consumer will go where it's $4. Mm-hmm. So I think market-wise certainly has an impact 100%. I don't think there's the opportunity for somebody to recover their losses by playing with their individual prices because you'd price yourself out of the market and you've got the online market that you have to compete with. But it does absolutely have an impact, and we have a campaign that we collaborate on with Toronto Crime Stoppers. It's called It Costs Us All. There's a website called It Costs Us All with a lot of different information, which is really about educating the consumer on the impact it does have, because eventually it does cost us all. And the market has to move up in order to not just recover the losses of goods, but it's all the extra expenses, right? If you're spending a ton more money on protecting yourself, if your insurance is now declining your insurance claims because of breakage, glass breakage, and that because you've put in too many claims, if you're spending more money on guards, that extra labor, at some point, your P&L, if you're in the red, you're not going to survive. So retailers got to make up enough revenue and enough profit in order to do all these things. So if we can curb this, where retailers are not having to take so much of these other additional expenses, I'm sure that would also have an impact.
Rui, before we let you go, anything else about the report you'd like to add or the situation itself that retailers find themselves in?
Yeah, so one, I would say it's the public education. I think it's important that the general public understand that retail crime is not a victimless crime. Be educated. Two, be aware of where you're buying your goods. Yes, it's great to buy stuff online, but if the deal is too good to be true, likely is not. $1,000 drill and a brand new package that you're paying $100 for likely isn't somebody who's reselling it because they got too many gifts. So be aware of where. Don't support organized retail crime because it is supply demand. And the last would be collective. Speak to your MP, speak to your officials, be part of the message to make sure that we're working collectively in Canada to be tougher on crime. And, I'm not talking militant. I'm just talking as a collective. We need to make it a focus to take our communities back while dealing with this complex issue of unhoused individuals that are falling into the mix. It's a complex issue and everybody should be aware and trying to do their part to help.
All right, there's Louis Rodriguez, heads up loss prevention and risk management at the Retail Council of Canada. Rui, appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
Interesting statistic that I read earlier this morning as it relates to retail theft. The province of Ontario right now has over 41,000 security guards.
41,000?
41,000, and they are actively recruiting.
That's crazy.
For that very reason.
Job of the future right there.
Job of the future. If this thing doesn't work out,
Yeah, we could really chase down some guys, yeah.
Okay, thanks to crack executive producer Zach Trunzo today, who has brought up the Rogan Experience.
Look at that right behind us.
There's the number, 1.538 million views in real time from last night's episode and 34,000 comments. So to answer your question, yes, he is catching us.
Yes, it's getting close.
Getting close. So we'll need to address that.
How many subscribed? 20 million? Wow.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised it's not higher by now. Like, 'cause this is a day old.
I can feel my heels being nipped at.
Yeah, I know. But I am surprised that it's only at 1.5 million. I would have thought it would have been higher than that. But I guess other people also listen on wherever they get their favorite podcasts.
Yes, they do.
Where you can also get the #1 podcast in the world.
Yes, you can. And you can also sign up to get our content every night. Mm-hmm. Closerlookpodcast.ca. And you, of course, can reach out anytime, 24/7. Closer Look at villagemedia.ca. As Joe and Pierre Polyev play us out tonight for Zach Trunzo, executive producer of this evening's program, and Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief here at Village Media. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for your time this week. We'll do it again Monday night. Don't forget Dan Schulman from Rogers Blue Jays Baseball right here, 7 o'clock Monday on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe, provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.